Welcome back to part 2 of the Fringe Radio Show for Saturday night, the 27th of September. I hope everybody is having a great evening out there. Still cold and rainy here in Salt Lake City, without a doubt. It is miserable. They're talking about snow at 8,000 or 9,000 feet tonight. I have a feeling we wake up and see the skies clear. We're going to see some of that white stuff up on top of the back end of the Rockies. Fringe Radio is here every Friday night from 6 till 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I want to say hello to all of our listeners that listen to us at the Listen Live link at k-talk.com or through the Inception Radio Network or on good old AM 630 here in Salt Lake City. If you want to join the chat, you can go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com and join the chat. The whole gang's in the chat room tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a couple of great guests lined up for the rest of the show. Fringe Radio covers anything related to paranormal, ufology, alien and alien abduction, science and science fiction, cryptozoology, conspiracies of all kinds, anything shrouded in just a little bit of mystery. You can find us on the World Wide Web at fringeradioshow.com. If you've got a sighting, a story, or some questions for our guests, which we got a ton of them sent in tonight, go ahead, contact us through the web page, and we'll make sure that we get back to you. All right, our second guest that's up for tonight, and it's interesting because of an announcement that looks like was made, or some interesting stuff that came out this week, is Boyd Crompton. Boyd is a master modeler. He started building models in the early 70s with his dad at the kitchen table. He was fascinated with all these different parts and how a box of parts could become something so amazing, cutting plastic pieces, shaping and painting. He's gone on, and of course life took over, and he had to raise a family and move on with life, but he's back into the modeling business again. He is a master modeler. He's got a YouTube channel called Trekworks, and he's got a project coming up here very shortly that he's going to be talking about tonight as far as Star Trek goes. So without any further delay, let's get him on the line. Boyd, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and the Fringe Radio Show.
Hi, Pat. Glad to be on with you and your audience tonight.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, my friend. Hopefully where you're at, it's not as cold and stormy as it here is in Utah this evening.
We're about 75 here tonight, Pat. It's a beautiful evening here tonight.
Man, you're making me jealous. It's about 55 and raining. Boyd, how did you, I read just a little bit of your bio. You sent me a ton of great stuff, and we're going to have some fun in the next hour. How did you get into modeling and kind of where it's taken you today? I mean, you're a master modeler. I've looked at your work. It's just phenomenal. But how did it all kick off for you?
Like a lot of other guys when they were young, Pat, I started out building models with my dad on our kitchen table, and I found it to be a fascinating experience. A little bit what you mentioned there, when you can take some basic blank parts and pieces that are inside of a cardboard box and create something that's a realistic-looking replica of one of your favorite objects is always something that I found really fascinating.
And then you found Star Trek on TV. Obviously, we all did. I don't know how old you are. I mean, I'm in my early 50s, but of course, Star Trek was a big part of my life when I was young. And without a doubt, at least in the modeling, in the model making business, I remember even as a young kid, Star Trek models, the Enterprise, of course, and the Galileo, and all these other things came out. It was definitely one of the most modeled ships in the early days, in fantasy, if you will.
Oh yeah, it's been Star Trek's had an incredible run. It's kind of funny you mentioned that. The original Star Trek Enterprise model kit released by AMT, I think it originally was called the Aluminum Metal Toys Corporation. That model kit's approaching a 50-year run where it's been in constant production, so that's really saying something about the popularity of the franchise and the hobby and how it's grown. And like you, I was a young guy, probably sometime in the early 70s. I remember it was a cold night back in Wisconsin. I was outside shoveling snow in the evening, getting ready to come inside and see if I could get my chance at seeing something on TV. Back in those days, we only had the antennas on the roofs, no cable television back then. And so we had maybe 5 or 6 channels we could watch, and only one TV in the house, and I was kind of the low guy on the totem pole. But that night I walked in, and nobody was around the TV, and I turned it on, and there was my first episode of Star Trek. And from the minute I started getting into the show, it was just a fascinating experience, seeing a spaceship that looked radically different than all the other things we had seen before. Everything was kind of, rocket-shaped and things like that, and it was just it just reached right out and grabbed me from the minute I first saw it.
So you were kind of hooked on the Star Trek bandwagon. Did you ever think at a young age it was when you got into building models and stuff, and of course now where you're at today with things, but did you ever think that this, and I call Star Trek a genre because I think it's what the Comic-Cons are made up of and so many different things, but did you ever think it was going to be around 50, 60 years later?
Oh, I didn't think so, like a lot of people didn't. I think what really coincided with preserving and kind of launching Star Trek was the space race that was going on at the end of the 60s, when I think the public started realizing that this stuff was becoming a reality and we were working our way towards possibly something like Star Trek. And the combination of the real things going on and the major achievements we had with our space program, and I think it just catapulted everything, and you saw science fiction in general just become more interesting and kind of more widespread. But yeah, I would have never dreamed in a million years that it turned into what it has, and it's just an incredibly huge universe now, and the model building aspect of it has become quite fascinating, and especially recently over the last probably 5 or 6 years, where they're making it now where people have access to all types of technical items to be able to light these models. That was one of the big things about science fiction. It's all about lighting and things like that and special effects, and so that's opened up a whole new opportunity for model builders out here today.
With the one thing that I find fascinating, with modeling is, and where I look up to you, and where I think what you're doing is a great thing, like with TrekWorks, and we want to talk about that a little bit. But the kids of today, Boyd, are so. What I notice is they don't do anything with their hands anymore. They go to school, they come home, they're texting on their iPhone on the way home. They get home, it's Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and everything else. And it's nice to see that there are people like you out there building magnificent models. I mean, they're pieces of artwork, but hopefully that's inspiring the kids of today to start doing stuff with their hands and pull out the AMT models or whatever in a tube of glue, and maybe you're not going to build them at the caliber you build them or a lot of other modelers build them, but at least it gets them some hands-on experience to start playing with something.
Oh, and that's absolutely true, Pat. I've actually sat down and had interviews and talked with some of the people at the very top of the industry, people that have worked in the film industry creating these miniatures and things, and that was a common denominator that came up in a lot of those discussions, was that they, as artists from sort of a past generation, are a little bit concerned themselves that there isn't enough of the young people getting involved in this. And when they talked about how they all got started, it was the very thing you mentioned, doing things with your hands, even something simple like learning music or just drawing, something that can inspire that creativity, because I think it's locked up in every person. They just have to find a revenue to be able to tap into that. And what we've been doing on the TrekWorks channel, we were founded back in October of 2011. We started off really simply here on a small little coffee table in my front room. I happened to be out of the hobby for several years. Like you mentioned, I grew up, got busy with my family and everything, and didn't really, built a few models occasionally here and there. And one night I happened to go on YouTube and saw that there were a couple of videos out there that people had put up about sharing some experiences building models, and I thought, hey, what a great opportunity using social media to get in touch with other people that have the same interest in things like that. And from the very beginning, I decided to approach it from a teaching standpoint. When I was a kid, I used to have friends come over when I was building models, and even back then, Pat, people that built models were kind of still in the majority, even when we kind of think of it as in the modeling heyday. I didn't remember a lot of other kids from school that were doing it. If they did, they weren't really talking about it a whole lot. But I always thought it was really interesting, because they would come over on the weekends, and I'd show them these little things that I learned, and some of the things handed down from my dad, being, he was kind of a craftsman, and some of the things I learned, and they were always fascinated about. So when I started the channel, I thought, what a great way and a great platform to introduce people to this hobby, and always to keep it in a sort of a very approachable way, and show that you can start out on a basic coffee table like I was doing in my early videos, and moving all the way up to building a shop where you're producing these models that are, a lot of them are worthy of going in, museum-type settings. And it's all a way you can develop, and you just take your, kind of go along one step at a time, and I encourage people to start out with simple things and use that social media, which is such a powerful tool now, to visit forums, look at videos. There are several ways that you can do your research and learn about not only the ways that we do things, but the tools that are available. And that's important. That I've had people ask me, well, you've got this entire huge shop, with all this stuff in there, and I'll never be able to have that many tools and things. Well, you just get a few here and there, and after you're in the hobby for a few years, you've got a collection, and a tool's always a good investment because you can use it over and over.
Right.
Before you know it, you have everything that you need to, do just basic modeling all the way up to this kind of more complicated and technical stuff that we're doing here. So it's been a tremendous surprise to me, actually. Even 3 years later, I'm surprised at how rapidly it's grown and the overwhelming response that we've had to it. And I get a lot of stories from people every week. I answer probably a couple of hundred emails each week with people's questions and comments and things. And one of the common things I hear, there are several guys that have maybe went through the same circumstances as I did, where they were away from the hobby for a while, but they came back into it when they saw this exciting technical stuff that's become available. Like I said, the ability to do lighting and the wiring and the electronics knowledge that you need to put these together is within a lot more people's reach now, because there's just so many products and things that are out there and people that are willing to help and guide you through the process. So it's been really, really fascinating.
Well, and the one thing, just for people to know, if you go out to trekworks.net, that'll lead you into what I saw, looks like a forum where there's just tens of thousands of posts, people out there to help other people build. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And then your channel, you have a show that you're a part of called The Model Shop Guys. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. The Model Shop Guys is a 1 hour live webcast that we broadcast right from our shop here in San Antonio every Saturday night. And I've got my co-host Jeremy, and we basically take the audience right into our shop with us live every week, and we demonstrate building these models, a wide variety of models. TrekWorks has been primarily all about sci-fi, doing Star Trek and other sci-fi related stuff. But on our Model Shop Guys show, we demonstrate all kinds of modeling, whether you're into military, car modeling, spaceship modeling, and everything in between. So we've been having a lot of fun with that, and we interact with the audience. They're right there live with us. They can ask us questions while we're doing things, and we get requests for demonstrating live techniques in real time so they can see it and things like that. So it's been really fun, and it keeps getting bigger every week.
Now, you're looking at your website. You've got tons of photos on there. Do you offer, if people want to have models built, do you offer that to people as well? Is that a service that you offer?
I sure do, yeah. And that kind of started out more of when I got back into the hobby, I'd never even thought about that. And we just were going along doing our videos, and we're up somewhere over 300 and something videos now, and we're always looking for new subjects and things like that. And being a person that likes to collect models as well, and a very understanding wife, I've got an area in here in a small room in my house that I kind of display all my models, and that started getting kind of full. And I remember one day my wife and I talking about it, and she said, when people ask you to build them a model, that they requested, and you've always turned them down. And she said, well, we're running out of room for you to keep all of your own models here. And then a way that you could keep on building is maybe build for others, because, they obviously like your work and things like that. So that's kind of how that whole thing came about, and that's turned into almost a full-time job now. And it's just been fascinating. And we are probably our Enterprise Refit that we build a lot of, the big 1/350 scale kit, is probably the one that's in most popular demand. But we get all kinds of requests, some from the not-so-well-known genres. We just completed one up here a couple of weeks ago from the movie Dune. They had this kind of odd-shaped ship they called the Atreides Trading Frigate, which was sent out to a gentleman all the way from Finland. So that was pretty cool. And but yeah, it's just been growing and growing, and we're very busy building models for others now. Well,
your work is just fascinating. What I'd like to talk about, though, and that's without a doubt caught my eye. You've got a project going on, a funding project going on, to build an 8-foot-long Enterprise that was used, a model that was used in the Star Trek the Motion Picture, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, all this kind of past history here is kind of all led up to this, and we've always been kind of moving up and getting bigger and bolder in our projects that we've been doing here at the shop. And a little bit of history about talking about the studio scale Enterprise refit. Getting into the researching of the original model. Again, like a lot of people, when I first saw the ship, I remember going to the premiere in 1978. I think it was on December 7th, seeing anticipating the beginning of the new franchise, the new era of Star Trek, and wanting to know what the ship was going to look like. Seeing that giant ship coming out of that dry dock, like a lot of people can remember, was just fascinating for me. And I really wasn't even into the plot of the movie or the characters or anything. I was just fascinated by that ship and the design. It was so beautiful, and I was interested to know who the people were that designed it and built the actual model. It was one of the most realistic-looking models I've ever seen on a major motion picture. And when I did research later on, it turns out that they probably spent more time detailing and making that model perfect than any other model that's been done for a movie. And just over time, doing a lot of researching, I got to know Paul Olson, who was the gentleman who did the original beautiful paint job on that model, which is a really highly complex kind of pearlescent paint job. And it just made the model look so much more in scale, and sold that idea that it was over 1,000 feet long. And Paul actually has written a book called Creating the Enterprise, which he tells the story about some of the behind-the-scenes things. And I had ordered his book online and then just started emailing back and forth. Well, it all led up to getting invited out to L.A. this last April for a get-together with Paul and 4 or 5 of the other people that were major contributors to the film. Jim Dow, who actually built the original studio model, Richard Taylor, who did all the design work on it, who worked directly with Gene Roddenberry, bringing the movie up to the level that they were looking for past the television show, and Mark Stetson, who went on to become an Academy Award winner for his work on Lord of the Rings, and got invited out there to sit down with those guys for like a round table discussion. And one thing led to another, and after a fascinating conversation about how the original model was built, and me being a modeler guy that wants to know all the details, which they were really, really friendly and nice, and shared some great memories about all that. We got onto the subject of where is the original model now, and we had seen that the photos that were released, I think from around 2006 or 2007, when the model was sold at the Christie's auction. The model was in fairly poor condition. It had been stored for several years. It had gone through over 13 years of use in all 6 of the films. I don't think when they built the original model they envisioned it lasting that long, but so she wasn't in such great shape anymore. And I kind of brought up the idea of, hey guys, what would it be like to get back and have a chance to maybe restore that model? Wouldn't that be fascinating for fans and people out there that would love to see that ship brought back to life? And they're, those guys right now are on a kind of a separate little program of trying to either track down the original model and do a restoration on it, or they're going to recreate their own studio scale reproduction of the model and bring it all up to today's standards. But we got this idea here at the shop of building up our own 8-foot replica, which would be exactly like the original filming miniature off of an existing kit that's out there. And so that's how this whole idea got started. So we decided to bring our fans in on the idea, and we launched a basic Kickstarter program over on Rocket Hub, which is a crowd funding campaign to help us raise the funds to build the model. And we've just kicked that off. We've been into it for a couple of weeks now, and things are going really, really well with that.
The model, the original one that was built, was there ever a mold? I mean, did they create a mold for that, Boyd, and then and pull a few out, or was it just a one-time shot? I know I've done a lot of looking on the internet and kind of I find it, even though it's a model, it's a fascinating subject because back then there was no CGI. I remember reading a couple of books when and like yourself, I stood in line in winter, freezing to death, back on the south side. I'm a Chicago native, on the south side of Chicago, and you don't see that much anymore. But back then, one of the theaters, a big theater house, had 8 screens in it, and Star Trek was playing on all 8 screens. And people were outside freezing to death in the cold. And, I mean, they were around the building 4 times. You don't see that with a movie anymore. But just kind of digging into it, there was no CGI. The little bit of CGI that was used, for the ship and on the scenes and the sets of the ship was pretty complex at that day, at that time. The computer animation wasn't as like where it is today. And to build these replicas and then shoot them, like you said, you believed that you were looking at the real thing. Did they make many of these, or was there just one made out of wood or fiberglass, or what's the history on that?
Well, I got a great opportunity to sit down and really pick Jim Dow's brain. I mean, every fan would have been just fascinated to sit down and talk to the man who basically took nothing and built it step by step all into what that magnificent model was. And Jim went into a lot of detail about how it was done, and more than what I can tell you here on this interview. But you can either read Paul's book, or you can check out some of the stuff that Paul Olson's got on his website. But the model was basically started off with a steel inner armature, which was made out of reinforced, I believe it was chrome moly with some aluminum tubing. And so they knew that they needed to have an extremely strong inner structure because, as you mentioned, they weren't doing CGI work back then. And so the model was going to be shot with this new system that they came up with through the company called Magicam, which Jim Dow also created the technique and the method that they used for doing that type of filming back at that time. And the model was going to have to be put on an armature that would allow it to be photographed from several angles, either on its side sometimes from below, and actually they had another mount that extended right out of the back of the shuttle bay and on a long extension pole. And they told me that was the scariest time to film the model because the model actually weighed about 150 pounds. And suspended on the long end of that armature shaft, it was more equal to around 350 pounds with the leverage on it.
Right.
And so whenever they had to shoot like that, they were always worried. But Jim has actually still got the original molds that he created for that, and they did it in layers. They did it with styrene and some other types of materials. The sides of the actual hull, from what I was told, were molded in clear, and they painted over the surface and just taped off the areas where they wanted windows and illumination and things like that, and they just added on layers, and all the wiring was done, and it was just about a 2-year process to build the model. I think he said at the time it cost the studio something around $300,000 to produce it, which is probably over $1 million in today's money.
Right.
Just tell you how complex that thing was.
Now, your model that you're going to build, is it pulled from that plug, or is this something totally different?
Well, it's a mold that's been done by a gentleman out there that's been producing these for a while, and they are taken from original plans and drawings, and so it's a very, very accurate model. And again, being studio scale, it's exactly 8 foot. Talking to Jim, when he built the original, they actually wanted to go closer to somewhere around 12 feet. He wanted to go 1 inch to the foot on the scale, but they weren't able to do that due to the space they were going to be filming in, and they just realized that structurally that the model itself was going to be inherently weak with its design. You've got the big saucer and the nacelles, and so when we do our model here in the shop, we're going to be doing the same thing, starting off with an inner armature and then building up the shell around it.
Gotcha. So is this going to be a built-from-scratch model then, from the ground up?
Pretty much, yeah. And we're going to be the exciting thing about this project, and one of the things that's really interesting to the people that have already been following it, is that we've got several people from around the hobby that are all going to be contributing to this project, creating parts. We use specialty parts which are made out of brass, which we call photo etch parts. They're actually they use an acid etching technique to create these really fine, intricate parts and panels where you need a lot of sharp, crisp detail and things like that. And, of course, some molds are going to need to be made, and we're going to create another party out there will be working on doing the electronics and designing all the circuitry and everything that we'll use to do all the lighting, because now we have the ability to do some of the lighting on the actual model that they couldn't do back in 1978, where they had to do it in post-production and things like that. So we can actually make it even a more screen-accurate version than what the original model was done, based off of the people that we'll be bringing together for this project.
Now, also, I was going through your notes a little bit too. Are you going to go ahead and are you going to kind of film as this thing is being built? Is there going to be are you going to put something together so people can kind of watch it come together?
Oh yeah, and I think that's one of the exciting things about our project is that there'll be a documented record of the whole process all the way through, and people will be able to follow along that watch our channel on TrekWorks and see the progress as we go. Our goal is to have the model built and completed by September of 2016, which will be the 50th anniversary of the franchise. So there's going to be a lot to see in between now and then at the finale, we hope to have a grand unveiling at our shop. You know, we've been working here in my garage at my home for the last year and a half, and we've just been growing so much. We're going to be moving into a full-blown model building shop, and we hope to unveil the model there and have a big crowd of fans there to enjoy it, make a Texas-style barbecue celebration day out of it.
Yeah. Do you ever think, Boyd, that you'll put this thing on the road? Maybe. I mean, like I've been to a couple of the Star Trek conventions. It's just amazing. You ever think you'll go on the road with it? I mean, even though it's going to be huge, that would be kind of like the B9 robot builders, the guys that I got into that actually and started fabricating parts myself years ago. And the guys that build the full-size Lost in Space robots. It's just amazing to go to these gatherings, and like with the Star Trek conventions. You ever see yourself taking this ship on the road?
Oh, it'd be fantastic, and there's no question that the model is just, and the ship itself, there are so many fans, and it's kind of an interesting thing. You know, you could show the image of the Enterprise worldwide, and most people would instantly recognize what it is that you're showing them, and so we'll just have to see how that goes. You know, we'd be open to that idea. I know a lot of people would like to see it, and one of the big motivators about this whole thing, too, was that, you know, the original model has been placed away in a private collection now, and it's not available for public viewing, so that's kind of a shame. I kind of feel like this icon of a ship, just like the original 11-foot from the original series is on display at the Smithsonian. I kind of feel like these models should be on public display, and that people and fans from all over can come and see it and enjoy it. So that's another one of the motivating factors for doing this.
Isn't it? I thought I subscribed to a few things on refit Aren't they restoring that model at the Smithsonian right now? Isn't it kind of going through a cleanup in a refit right now?
Yes, they are. They're for years, the model has been stored in the basement at the Smithsonian at the gift shop area, and a lot of fans felt like that wasn't really the most respectable place for that model to be, being it was such an important part of pop culture. And, the very fact that the model itself and the show itself has inspired many people to go on to actually work in real space, become astronauts and physicists and things like that. So it was really exciting news to hear. I believe the Smithsonian received something like a $30 million grant from the Boeing Corporation to open up a brand new wing at the Smithsonian related to space and flight, and so they decided it would be a good time to move the model and do some restoration and conservation work on it, which based on pictures that people had posted online over the years, you could see there was some deterioration to go, starting to happen here and there. So I think they're going to be doing the first phase of this. They're going to evaluate the model, and you can follow along with that at the Smithsonian website. They're going to be documenting that whole process, which I think is really cool for the fans to be able to take part of that. And it looks like they're going to look at the model and see what type of conservation needs to be done, and then go through all that, and then go to the second phase, which would be actually doing the work and then having that completed by the time they open up a new wing, which I think is in 2016, and then the model will go on display out there in a brand new case, and that'll be where she'll be for quite a while. So I'm really excited. They recently restored the original Galileo full-size prop,
right?
And that made its way down to the Houston Space Center, and I had a chance to go see that, and I was just really, really pleased that they, saved that piece from the boneyard, if you want to say it like that, and it was just so beautifully done, and these things just deserve to be preserved for many people for many years to enjoy seeing them.
Wasn't that in somebody's backyard or garage or something? I mean, and it was just kind of deteriorating away. I mean, I believe it was owned by a private party, wasn't it?
It was. It had changed hands several years. A lot of us fans were kind of following the progress of it and getting little scraps of information about it here and there as we knew it still existed, and it became in really, really poor condition, and it was sitting in a storage yard somewhere, I think, on the East Coast, and the lot got foreclosed on or something like that, and they were kind of forced to put it up for auction, and two gentlemen, I think from out in New Jersey, purchased it, and they were boat builders, yacht builders, and so they had the expertise to do all the repair and restoration on the wood and fiberglass work that it needed. And I've got to say, if you're a fan of it, to do yourself a favor and go visit it at the Johnson Space Center. They did a beautiful job on it. It's been restored to last for a very, very long time, and they were the perfect people to do the job. And I understand those same people are a little bit involved in the restoration of the 11-footer too, so that's good to see it. You know, it's in good hands.
Well, yeah, because again, it is, even though it's, like I think one of the famous actors said, it's just a movie or it's just a TV show. The following of Star Trek and everything about it, it's in the billions. I mean, look at the Las Vegas convention that was just on here a couple of months ago. I mean, I saw some photos that somebody took, one of our listeners sent to us, and you couldn't even get down the hallways. I don't know how many people they ran through the place. We got to take a quick commercial break. Our guest tonight is Boyd Crompton. He is a master builder, model builder. You can check out his Facebook page. It's TrekWorks. Go look at all his work. We're talking about the 8-foot Enterprise he's going to be building and a little bit more about Star Trek. Stick around. We've got another segment to go, and we'll be back with Boyd in just a few. K-Talk, AM 630 in Salt Lake City. Stick around. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Our guest tonight is Boyd Crompton. Boyd, thank you so much for giving us some time on a Saturday night.
Glad to be here with you, Pat. Love that Lost in Space theme music.
Been using that for since day one. Do you do much Lost in Space modeling?
Oh, sure, yeah. We've built several. In fact, we just we've done them all. I think most of the kits that are out there. We've done the big Jupiter 2, the Chariot, and we just finished up the new 1/6 scale B9 robot and did all the lighting on that guy.
Gotcha. What's the of all the modeling you do? Now, I was on your site and looking at you do sea view models, and I see you're doing some World War II submarines. What is the space stuff still the most asked about, or do you kind of run the gambit and go all over with it?
Well, the TrekWorks channel that I've been doing for the past 3 years is primarily all sci-fi based, but myself, I enjoy doing all types of modeling in all the genres that are out there. So that's why we kind of started the Model Shop Guys show, so we could kind of get into that area as well. And it's just nice to kind of float around a little bit. After you've built 5 or 6 Enterprise refits in a row, it's nice to have a little change up here and there. Exactly.
When are you going to start your 8-foot Enterprise? Are you going to wait till you get all your funding first, or are you going to go ahead irregardless and move forward with it?
We're actually, our funding project is going until about the end of November, but we're actually already started on the project. We're gathering up research material and getting all the design work, the preliminary design work started on the electronics and some of the things like that.
Gotcha. And again, they can go to TrekWorks on Facebook or our page, our Facebook page. We have a link there where people can go ahead and they can go ahead and donate to the cause. We did get some questions in for you. One of the questions was, has anybody from Paramount shown any interest in your work?
No, not so far. They're probably pretty engaged with getting their. I was happy to see that they moved up the production schedule on their next movie, which will be Star Trek 3, to make the 50th anniversary of the film. So I imagine they're pretty involved in that. But as our project evolves, you never know. We might hear something. We'd love to. Again, we're huge fans, and all the people that are viewers on our channel and things like that are big fans, and we would love to be take part in some part of the 50th anniversary of the franchise. I think it's one of the most important anniversaries that there will be for the franchise itself, since by the time we reach the 75th or 100 down the line, a lot of the original people involved aren't going to be around anymore. So I think they should make a big deal of it.
Well, and I did notice, I've been kind of watching that on social media, that they're talking with William Shatner to make an appearance in this third film. And as a matter of fact, today I believe he's at one of the cons, and they did a question panel, and he said yes, he's been contacted, and yes, he would like to do it. So I think that's going to push it over the top.
Oh, absolutely! I'm all for it. I know there's been some mixed discussion about it, but I'm all for it as a fan. No better way, no more of a important tribute, and hopefully they could squeeze Leonard in there somehow, some way. I'd love to see the two of them on the screen together one more time.
Exactly.
A lot of fans would, I'm sure.
Oh, exactly. Do they? Let me ask you, Boyd. In like with Paramount, with a company like Paramount, when they do a Star Trek film, are they still use? I mean, I know so much stuff is CG now, but are they still using miniatures? Are miniatures still being built for motion pictures?
Yeah, they are. They're. I was really pleased to hear back when J.J. Abrams took over the franchise and they started working on the first film for 2009 that he was still a big believer in using miniatures. Most of the principal scenes you see of the Enterprise on the films now are CGI, but they were built up off of using some models. They a pretty good concept that they work with nowadays is they'll build a physical model of what they're trying to shoot to get the 3D animators kind of familiar with looking at the object from different angles and seeing how the light plays on it and some of the detail that's there and things like that, and they definitely work with that. So it's interesting to hear also that supposedly the new Star Wars film is going to rely heavily on miniatures this go-around, and that they've kind of gone back to the roots of what a lot of the fans like to see as far as how they produce these things.
Well, because, now you mentioned this model, the original model that was in the motion picture. Was that same model used, and I think you did mention that, was that used in several of the films?
It was used in all the films through Undiscovered Country for a total of about 13 years, I think.
Because did it get cleaned up or changed a little bit, or did it just pretty much stay the same?
Well, after the motion picture, the film was, the model was originally shot over at on the Paramount lot. And then ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, took over from Star Trek II on. And I think they may have used another production company for Star Trek V. But the model went through several changes. One of the immediate things that happened was, since they were using a blue screen type background to do the matte shots, a matte shot is when they've got to shoot the model and then overlay a background or whatever scene they need to put the model into. In those days, they didn't have the ability to correct anything that might happen with film errors and things like light bouncing off the model the wrong way and things like that. So the original paint job that was done to the model was, again, talking about Paul Olson's work, was a beautiful, just fascinating, opalescent-looking paint job with all these different types of pearl iridescent paints that change colors and reflect light and just give it that look of having these thousands of individual panels all over the hull. And they realized quickly in the first or second day of shooting that it was causing issues with post-production where they were trying to do the matte shots and things. So they immediately, even during the production of Star Trek the Motion Picture, started dusting the model down with dull coats to get rid of some of that shininess. And then by the time it moved to Star Trek II, they were doing even more of that. And then in the course of handling and all the different things that it went through, damage was done here and there. They had to do touch-ups and things like that. By the time it reached use for Star Trek VI, it was in pretty poor condition, and that's why in that film, any up-close shots you saw of the model were separate, larger-scale pieces that were built to show the detail up close and things like that. But they couldn't film the model up close, where in the original, like they told me, they were literally passing the camera like inches over the hull, anywhere you wanted to go on the model, and it was just absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I remember, and I'm gonna have to get Paul's book, because I remember seeing a documentary, and it's interesting. You don't see much of that out there. You'll see something on YouTube or whatever. It kind of comes and goes. I don't know if somebody ends up, because of the interest of it, they grab onto it and then sell a copy of it. But I remember in shooting that film, and that's what fascinated me about this model, is the space dock. They had to build a model of that, and I remember them talking about how the model had to be suspended up high in the air to be able to get the cameras underneath to give you that that depth perception. That's almost a feat of magic.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The original model of the Enterprise was built on a dolly that was movable, and it had, of course, all these different mounting positions. And to get the shot of the Enterprise leaving the dry dock, they actually hung the dry dock from the ceiling, and the model was placed on a track so they could slowly move the model in and out. They actually, most of the time when they shot the model, they were moving the camera and not the model. But that particular shot, they needed to have the model from a side view appearing to move inside of the space dock and glide past some of the girders and structure that was in there. So they actually decided to create a track for that and roll it out like that.
Interesting, very interesting. Another question for you was, what was, besides this one you're going to build, what was the largest or most sophisticated model you've ever built?
That would have to be building even the 350 scale Enterprise Refit. You're combining so many things when you build that model. It's got of course, a very intricate paint job. And what we do at the shop here, and one of the reasons that a lot of people have been interested in our build here, is we did all the research to do reproduce the original paint job that Paul Olson did. I got a lot of information from him and tips and tricks and a guide to how he did it and the colors that he used, right down to the actual brand of the paint that he used. And so it's a combination of a really, really complex paint job that the paint job alone on the model probably takes 400 or 500 hours to do. And then you've got all the wiring and all the sub-assemblies that have to be done. And you quickly realize that when you're building a model and you're going to be lighting it, you can take the assembly instructions and just basically pitch them out the window, because the order that you have to build everything in is completely different. You have to build everything in subsections. You have to pre-wire it, and you have to keep in mind, how you're going to route your wiring and how you're going to get the lighting in there. And you want to make sure the lighting looks not just lit, but it has to look in scale, not too overly bright and things like that, so it fits with the size of the model. And the Enterprise has several lights on it that are supposed to be aimed in certain directions to give like floodlight look and things like that. So it's very, very complex.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, I would assume with this 9-footer you're going to be, or 8-footer, you're going to be able to do some amazing things with it.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the big things that we're going to be able to improve on over the original model was that we're going to actually do a shuttle bay in this one, a fully detailed shuttle bay. The original doesn't have a shuttle bay in it, unfortunately, because there's an armature mount in the back. Our model is not going to need to be filmed from all different angles and things like that, so we'll just have a mounting point on the bottom of the hull, and we'll be able to retain all the other detail on the model.
Gotcha. One of our listeners sent in a question for you. He said, were you ever a member of an organization called IPMS?
I've been a member of IPMS, sure. IPMS is International Model Building Club.
Okay.
They sponsor several events all over the country. In fact, if you look up your local IPMS chapter in your state or your area, they'll have a list there of all the shows that they're going to be doing in their area. The shows consist of people gathering to give demos on how to build models, and vendors who are selling model kits, and then a model show itself. So it's always a good time for you and your whole family to attend. It's always something interesting there.
And that's something they kind of have throughout the country then, huh?
It's all over. Yeah, every state has their own chapter.
Well, I'll have to take a look at that. I know there is a group here in town that does that. They're not real big, and they're more fantasy model builders, is kind of what I've heard. But I just find the whole thing so interesting. And again, when you take it to the level that you guys have, if somebody wants to have, if one of our listeners wants to have a model built by you, what is the best way to get a hold of you, Boyd?
They can contact me at my email, which is info@trekworks.net, and we'll be happy to talk to them about that. And there are several other. In fact, there's even large companies popping up now that are doing these models. And our kind of approach to it here is that each person that we talk to, a lot of them have specific areas of detail or certain things that they want to have reproduced in their replica, and so that's what we kind of specialize in. Each one of these models that we build is a little bit different. Somebody asks us for a certain amount of detail in the shuttle bay, or a certain way the Enterprise looked through the film series, whether it's the first ship that we saw in the first film or the way it looked towards the end, and all that in between. So we're kind of specialized in that area.
Gotcha. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight, and I will keep in touch with you. I want to find out the progress, and anything we can do to help with your fundraising campaign, we'll promote it. And it sounds like a great thing. It doesn't sound. It is a great thing that you're doing, and I hope to, if I get down your way to see it, or maybe down the road a few years, we'll see it at some of the conferences.
Thank you, Pat. Well, we appreciate you having us on tonight, and we'll definitely keep in touch and keep you updated on our progress.
Okay, my friend. Have a good evening. Again, thank you so much for giving us some time tonight.
Good night.
Okay, Boyd. Good night. All right. I hope that everybody enjoyed that. Boyd Crompton. If you do, go to his YouTube channel called TrekWorks. It's unbelievable, the modeling techniques that he uses. We had Jonathan on a couple of weeks ago. He is a local modeler here in Salt Lake City. Again, master modeler, both these guys. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And his group is called The Model Guys. They do a weekly webcast type thing. I'll put it on the Facebook page if you want to go check it out. Absolutely incredible, the work that they do.